Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is on parallelism. Let's get started. Alright, we're going to begin with a brief lesson overview. We're going to ask, what is parallelism? Why does it matter? How does it work? We're going to look at when to use parallel structure in your sentences for items in a series, items in pairs, items that are being compared, and as a grammatical signpost. And finally, we're going to look at how to correct faulty parallelism. All right, what is parallelism? Well, parallelism is the practice of using parallel structure in a sentence, giving two or more sentences or parts of sentences the same grammatical structure. Parallelism makes English writing clearer and more memorable. Humans love repetition, they love rhythm, they love things to make sense and be about the same. We remember things more easily when there's repetition, when there's rhyme, when there's parallelism. So, let's look at a couple of examples. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. It's a Chinese proverb. It's got a rhythm to it. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Parallel, easy to remember, which is why it became a proverb. Okay? We also use parallel structure to make jokes funnier. This isn't life in the fast lane, it's life in the oncoming traffic. This isn't life in the fast lane, it is life in the oncoming traffic. It makes perfect sense, and it's more memorable because it's parallel and we're used to idioms like life in the fast lane. Now, when do you use parallel structure? You obviously can't use it all the time or your writing will be very repetitious. You use it anytime you have two or more comparable or analogous ideas or items, such as items in a list. So, this is a non-parallel sentence. It will be an evening of singing, dancing, and there will be food to eat. Well, that got a little confusing toward the end. It kind of wandered off in its own direction. It's better and more parallel to say, it will be an evening of singing, dancing, and eating. We've got participial forms of each verb, and it creates a nice rhythm. Singing, dancing, and eating. You also use parallel structure for items in pairs, usually connected by a coordinating or correlative conjunction. If you're having trouble remembering which one those are, remember coordinating conjunctions join two things of equal importance, and correlative conjunctions join things that come in pairs. So, it's not parallel to say, the test measures reasoning skills as well as students' ability to solve problems. You notice how it gets kind of wordy and bumpy at the end there? Well, that's because it's not parallel and your brain was expecting it to be. So, you rewrite the sentence to say, the test measures reasoning skills as well as problem-solving ability. Now you're measuring two complementary things, two equal things, so you use parallel structure and all of a sudden it's clearer and more memorable. You also use parallel structure when you are comparing things, items being compared. So, for example, Jin Lee thinks only with her heart. You, however, also use your brain to think. Oh, that sentence kind of went off the rails at the end, didn't it? Not parallel. Let's make it parallel. Jin Lee thinks only with her heart. You, however, also think with your brain. Note we've got the subject, Jin Lee, and you, then thinks, or think in this case because it's you, with her heart and with your brain. It's parallel, it makes more sense. Okay. Parallel structure, especially in lists, is often introduced by a signal word or a signpost word, such as that, to, or of. Sometimes it's necessary to repeat these signal words in order to make your parallel structure clear. Sometimes parallel sentences could have multiple meanings if you don't reuse your signposts. So, watch for your signpost words, which usually come right before the thing that's going to be parallel. And if necessary, repeat the signpost word in front of the second or third or whatever thing that's going to be parallel. So, I love dogs because they're loyal and because they're funny. Well, if you didn't have this second because, you could say, I love dogs because they're loyal and they're funny. Well, they're funny may or may not be a cause of your loving dogs, but if you have that because, I love dogs because they're loyal, reason 1, and because they're funny, reason 2. Parallel structure, clearer and more memorable. All right, so how do you fix faulty parallelism? If you have one of those sentences that goes off the rails, what do? If just one of several items in your list is faulty, change it to match the structure of the others. So, I am industrious, creative, and I always tell the truth. You could kind of hear that sentence derailing. You've got 3 items, industrious, creative, and I always tell the truth. 3 items, 2 of them are short and they're in adjective form, industrious and creative, so we take the third one and we put it in adjective form. I am industrious, creative, and honest. A one-word adjectival way of saying I always tell the truth. Now it's clearer and more memorable. If you have two items with different structures, okay, well, now you can't go by majority rule anymore, so what do? You choose the structure that is more concise or eloquent. Basically, choose the one that sounds better. Erich von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, sold over 7 million copies. Several million copies of its sequel were also sold. This is a grammatical sentence, but it's not all that parallel, or, it's not all that memorable. So, we look at the two structures, and Erich von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, sold over 7 million copies. Well, that's pretty strong. Book did this. Nice active voice. This one is in the passive voice. The copies were sold. So we use the active voice for both because, as we remember from our active and passive voice lesson, the active voice is more dynamic. So we say its sequel also sold several million. Both in the active voice, both clear and memorable. All right, let's do a little practice. See if you can find the faulty parallelism in this sentence and correct it. Before we go, I need to make a few phone calls and the dishwasher needs to be turned on. It's grammatical, but it's not parallel. See if you can make it parallel. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. Here we are. Before we need to go, I need to make a few phone calls and turn on the dishwasher. Your clue in the previous sentence was the passive voice. The dishwasher needs to be turned on. The dishwasher needs to have something done to it. Well, why not just say, I need to do two things. I need to make a few calls and turn on the dishwasher. All right, see if you can correct the faulty parallelism here. The study revealed that most people vote based on a politician's personality, not where the politician stands on the issues. Oh, there went that wordy off the rails thing again. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. All right. The study revealed that most people vote based on a politician's personality, not on his stance on the issue. See that word on? That's a signpost word. We repeat it to indicate that we're being parallel. Notice how this sentence is actually shorter, takes up less space than the previous one. Parallelism has that advantage. If you get to the point where you're just listing things, you actually become more concise and more clear. All right, one last round of practice. Take a look at this sentence. It's actually a mangled quote from a famous movie, and see if you can correct the parallelism. And now on with the opera. Let joy be uncontained. Let there be dancing in the streets, drinking in the saloons, and let people kiss in the parlors. It's from Groucho Marx. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And here's the original line, which was parallel, which is why so many people remember it. And now on with the opera. Let joy be uncontained. Let there be dancing in the streets, participle plus prepositional phrase, drinking in the saloons, participle plus prepositional phrase, and necking, which is an old word for kissing, in the parlors. Once again, we have parallel structure, and it becomes a much clearer and more memorable and funnier line. Dancing in the streets, drinking in the saloons, and necking in the parlors. It's what made the line good and what made so many people laugh when the movie first came out. So as you can see, parallel structure is largely a question of figuring out how things fit together in pairs or in lists, and then making sure that they are structured in a parallel way. So you're repeating yourself, you're creating that rhythm, and people will remember what you said. And that's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Educator.com.